The Gospel of Mark is punchy right from the get-go. Hi, my name is Kate. Welcome to Seeking to Remain. This is a YouTube channel where I share about the upcoming Sunday Gospel and consider the different ways that I'm trying to incorporate that teaching into my life, things that stuck out to me, and things that maybe you'll find interesting as well. Thank you for coming on this little journey with me. We're continuing to tweak, continuing to try new things. I've got my phone flipped around today so I can see myself, but I'm not supposed to look at myself. I'm supposed to look like on the side, otherwise it looks like I'm staring off into space. But I'm curious if the video quality, the picture quality is any different, because I realized last week as I was showing you all the things that I couldn't actually see where they were in the shot because my phone was flipped around. And I usually just look at the back of my phone because Google told me that the back camera is better than the front camera. But I see plenty of people doing things this way and they seem to be able to see themselves. So we're going to give it a go. We are on the second week of Advent, and we're in Mark's Gospel. We are starting a new liturgical year. Last year was liturgical year A. We are now in liturgical year B. These are very well named. And we're going to be going through primarily the Gospel of Mark, with the Gospel of John gets sprinkled in throughout all three yearly cycles. But this year we're primarily going to be going through Mark. And Mark's Gospel opens, we actually get the very first verses of Mark's Gospel in our reading today for our second Sunday of Advent. And Mark says, "The beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God." And then he jumps straight into John the Baptist, which is interesting. Mark's Gospel is actually the earliest gospel as far as Bible scholars are able to tell. While Matthew's comes first in our, not chronological order, canonically in the order that the Bible has it presented, but Mark's is actually the earliest written, about 65 AD ish, 68, 69, somewhere in that late 60s range. And depending on, you've got different types of biblical scholarship that happen in different veins of thought as we continue to study more and know more. But there's a good argument that Mark was possibly an interpreter or some kind of attendant to St. Peter. And so a lot of these stories that Mark shares, a lot of the parables are things that he would have gotten from St. Peter himself, which is just amazing. Just sit with that for a while. If you only sit with that the words that you're reading were written down by someone who knew St. Peter, that's a lot to think about. And just so precious to read them from that place that's how close to Jesus these words came from. This isn't oral tradition that was passed down for hundreds and hundreds of years before it was finally written. This is within 30 years of Jesus' death. This was written down. It's amazing. And the first words of this gospel are, as I'm going to switch books from my Every Sacred Sunday over to my Word on Fire. You haven't seen this in a little while, and now I can tell if it's in the shot or not. Word on Fire book. I hope that's not backwards. Everyone says that, and it's always fine in the video, so I'm sure it's fine for you. It looks backwards to me. My Word on Fire Gospels. And Bishop Barron has a little commentary about that first line, about the beginning of John's Gospel. And he says that to us, that sounds pretty normal. We know that Jesus is the Christ. We know he's the Son of God. This is the good news. And you move on. Mark jumps right into the action, so you just run right along with it. But to stop and really consider these words. Mark uses a term that we say is good news, or as my Every Sacred Sunday translation said, it didn't say good news. It just says the beginning of the gospel. But gospel means good news. So, same word, just slightly different translation. Evangelion is the Greek, and it means good news. Usually that was a word that would have announced a victory of some kind in Rome, which usually means it was a Roman victory because they tended to do that at this time. So this was an imperial victory. This good news, this was the good news of the empire. But here, Mark is using it to talk about Jesus. So Bishop Barron says, when the emperor won a battle or quelled a rebellion, he sent evangelists, which is the term that we use, the 4 evangelists, to go out and tell this good news, this evangelion. So Mark is writing within, say, about 10 years of St. Peter's death, of Paul's death. He knew Mark, or he is Mark. He knew Peter. He saw the suffering, and yet he's talking about good news, this victory over everything, this victory over death that Jesus brings. So, because, Rome, you would think they put Jesus to death. But here is again this announcement that no, Caesar cannot conquer Jesus. The world cannot, because he is the good news. And then just to go a little bit farther, if you know Bishop Barron, you've heard most of this already, if not all of it. But Mark calls Jesus the Son of God, which, since the time of Augustus, was the term for the emperor. Again, pushing those societal norms, pushing those social boundaries, pushing back on Rome. And everyone knew it because Rome was where they lived. Rome covered this whole area, regardless of where Mark was writing from. There's debate about that. Was he in Rome? Was he in Palestine? Was he in Syria? Wherever he was under Roman rule. All of these things that he's saying, these terms, are specifically chosen to set up this whole gospel. That the world has been turned upside down by Jesus. And even those things that appear set in stone, the emperor as in charge and winning all these victories, even that has been taken over by Jesus. And this really sets up the whole trajectory of Mark's gospel. Mark's gospel is the shortest, as I said. You can, if you want to, you can sit down and read it in like one sitting. And you'll be out of breath if you do it, because it's just one thing after another after another. Jesus doesn't sit still. He heals somebody and he's immediately doing something else. And then. That's used so much in Mark's gospel. And each thing is supposed to shock you, to cause you to go, wait a second. He's sitting with sinners here. He's healing a demonic over there. He's in conflict with the Pharisees. It's rather stark. This is Jesus on a mission. But while Jesus is always on that mission, always moving, even in this very fast-paced gospel, Jesus pauses to pray. Those are the times that he slows down. He sends the crowds away and he prays. He sends the disciples in the boat before he walks on water because he stays to pray. And I think that's a really important example for this whole Advent season. We are busy. We are doing our things. We are getting things ready. We were getting out some of our Advent stuff from storage, and my kids were like, where's this? Where's this? Why haven't we set this up? Where's this thing I remember from last year? Why haven't we done this yet? And I was like, guys, I'm trying to make dinner and set up Advent at the same time. We can do this over a couple days. It's okay. It's okay to take a couple days to set up. It's okay to not put all the nativity pieces out at once. It's okay to go slowly. I think that's one of my big takeaways from Advent so far. I'm recording this on a Tuesday. It's been Advent for like 4 days. Not even that. 3 days. Maybe I need to slow down a little bit more. But it's just to try and move a little more slowly. To not be rushed. To be okay with sitting and reading stories. To be okay with lighting a candle and taking all the extra time it takes to coordinate having a candle lit with little kids. Just finding a new pace, lowering the expectations of how many things need to be done in a day. For example, this is a good example actually. We struggle with our 5th and 6th grade math. Math is not my thing. And we're doing Christmas school. We're trying to really dig into Advent and the Christmas season. We're doing all this extra stuff. We've put aside some of our regular school books just for these couple weeks. But math was the thing that Christmas school said, you really ought to keep doing math. And we all kind of went, ugh. But math is important. You do have to keep doing math. So instead of, we usually school 4 days a week. Our oldest 2 usually have a little bit of something extra to do on Wednesday, but for the most part, we school 4 days a week. So I scheduled 3 days of math, knowing that at least one day during the week, we probably wouldn't get to it. Or we could get to it if we were stressed and pushed. But that's not the point of this season. So yesterday, we had to go get John new glasses. Our 12-year-old needed new glasses to be ordered. We didn't get to math yesterday, but I planned 3 days. So I'm still fine. And we've already done math today. And they kind of got it right away. And I think the 11-year-old stayed upstairs to start working on what she was going to do tomorrow. Because we didn't have to rush it. That's a beautiful thing. That's the way I want to do math. So this was kind of a convoluted episode. I hope I'm able to get it all put into one piece for you. That made sense. Basically, the Gospel of Mark is punchy right from the get-go. He wants to turn your life upside down. He wants to say what you see in the world is not the reality in your heart and should not be the reality of the way that you live your life. Because Jesus is ultimately the King and the Messiah. He is the one who saves, not anyone or anything else. And if we slow down enough this Advent, perhaps we'll be able to reorient some part of our life so that we can better recognize who He is. I hope that you have a good week, and I'll see you next week.